Welcome back to the channel, everyone. So I finished Dark Age last night and now it's finally time to talk about it. So Dark Age, I think I would say this is probably my favorite book in the whole series. I actually had some issues with it, but it actually just contains some of the highest highs of the whole series. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins reading certain sections of this book. But yeah, let's start off with the plot. So yeah, the plot of this book is just so good. Probably, maybe the best one in the whole series again. Something I love about the plot and just this book in general is how complex that the stories become over the course of these 5 books. And you can really see it in this book here, the way that Pierce weaves together so many different things going on, so much political intrigue and characters kind of doing their own thing behind the scenes and different motivations and switching allegiances, and it's really starting to get that epic feel that I'd get from a really in-depth series like Game of Thrones, where there's just so much going on. I never got that feeling with the first trilogy because it was first POV, but the Iron Gold kind of took us in that direction, and now Dark Age just feels chef's kiss. There are so many parts in this book that just had me jaw dropped, like in silence, like I can't believe that just happened. So let's start with the structure of the book. It has a weird structure, which is kind of a pro and a con for me. So Pierce will spend long stretches of time just on one character instead of flipping between all the different POV characters like you would see in a different book. So for example, the first 150 pages just starts off with Darrow. It mixes between Darrow and Lysander chapters, and we don't see anyone else for all of part 1. And for this particular instance, I actually loved it, and it made complete sense, because the beginning of this book, it starts off how many books would end, with just an absolutely epic action scene, and just we have the war and the battle for Mercury, which is basically like a world war taking place on this planet with just the craziest technological warfare that I've seen in the story. So it makes sense to just keep our attention focused on this one pivotal moment for 150 pages. It's like a non-stop just barrage. It feels so intense. So to cut away would relieve a lot of that tension. And yeah, it was just an incredible way to start off the book. But then we move on to part 2, and it kind of like gets rid of all that tension and adrenaline and momentum that it's built up thus far. So it can feel a bit jarring to switch from that to this, and also you don't get to see some POV characters for a long time. So once we go from Darrow and then we start with Virginia, we don't go back to Darrow for a while, and also we don't see Lyria for a very long time in this book. And if you watched my review of Iron Gold, you know that Lyria's she had my favorite POV chapters from last book, and I love her as a character. She's a great character. Now this book, I absolutely loved her POVs, but we don't see it until page 400, which is more than halfway through the book. When we finally do get there, again, it's incredible. I love Lyria's role and how important she's become and how much she's developed as a character. But yeah, I pretty much loved every single POV in this book, even though it took a while to get there to some of them. But when you are on some of the POVs, sometimes you want to go back to someone else because it takes so long, but sometimes you just can't stop reading. For example, there are certain sections of Virginia's chapters later on that I just couldn't put it down at. This book, as you've heard probably many times, is very dark. It feels really, it's not even just the brutality and sheer violence of it, it's the absolute hopelessness of it. All our characters are just so down bad, just going through some of the absolute worst situations we've seen them in the entire series. And yeah, it feels completely just demoralizing and just damn. Especially the battle for Mercury, and you see these soldiers just basically waiting for the end to come. They're out of medicine, they're decaying from radiation sickness, their hair's falling out, they have no stims, no food, no water. It just seems like all is lost. I love how Pierce shows the absolute brutality of the warfare, kind of gives it kind of shows like, no, just because Darrow won at the end of Morningstar, it's going to be damn difficult to keep and maintain what he's done with all these vicious golds. And something about this book, we kind of see the golds as we've never seen them before. So we've known that golds are brutal and vicious, effective, highly intelligent commanders and captains, etc. But in this book, there are some scenes and moments that just highlight the difference between the gold species and the rest of the society. And I love moments like that. There's a certain part at the end involving an EMP, and it's kind of really illustrated there. But yeah, sometimes I kind of felt like this book was a little bit over the top with its violence. Just some moments here and there where it kind of almost felt less impactful for it, or just a bit bordering on the gratuitous side, but nothing really too bad. It just kind of feels overwhelming because the book is so dark throughout the majority of it. That's not to say there aren't any light moments. Overall, I love how Pierce is expanding the world and how complicated the plot and characters and politics and mysteries have become. And there are some mysteries here that I forgot about from last time. Like, for example, what the hell is that parasite thing? And I also love some of the new ideas and concepts in this book, the way how Pierce goes into more detail in the technological warfare. So, for example, he'll describe more of the star shells and the 𝐒𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐺 and talk about the bolts inserted into runner's body to help her operate one of these 40 feet beasts. But yeah, the plot I would give a 9.5 out of 10. Amazing. And the characters, again, this book shines here completely. So we have all of the existing characters from before, but I'm going to talk about the new characters because the existing characters are just amazing as usual. But something about this book is we get to see some really, really great growth and character development and depth from these characters because they're put in their absolute worst situations throughout the entire book, many of them, and we get to see how they struggle and overcome and act through these heinous and horrific circumstances. But the new characters shine a lot for me. I'll start with the villains because it almost seems like pretty much all of them are villains. But there's Atlas, which was a great character. I actually hated him maybe the most out of this book. Just because of, like, when you hear the book is dark, it's because of this character and the absolute gruesome acts that he commits. Like, my God. Like, some of the darkest stuff I've ever read, like up there with Game of Thrones. But then, later on in the book, you actually meet the character and it's just like, wow. He's like a complete enigma and not what you would expect from his, like, savage acts. And then we have Atalantia, who is this such a deviously delicious character. Like, she's quite funny. She's just like vain, intelligent, arrogant, kind of psychopath. But it's interesting that she's become like, she's turned from like this vain person into an actual soldier. And I thought that was really interesting to see. But Atalantia and her relationship with other characters, let's just say, in this book, I found to be fascinating. And then there's Ajax. I love this character as well. I love how he has this. So it reminded me of the way Joe Abercrombie uses irony in his stories. So for example, you can see it in Ghost, Bremadan Ghost, and I think a similar thing is going on with Ajax, where he's this extremely powerful, just an absolute genetic specimen of humanity, like built like a freaking beast, absolutely proficient in warfare and battle, but inside he's actually quite insecure and a jealous, insecure creature. There was Kalendora, the Love Knight, which I actually really love. It's nice to see someone on the society side that isn't like pure evil, like these other characters like Atlas, Atalantia. There was also Harnessus, or I don't know how to say his name, but he's like the second in command to Darrow. Actually, his character grew on me a lot, and I came to respect him a lot. I think it was in the last book too, but not that much. We spend a lot of time with the Obsidians again. and get to see just kind of their race and what they're up to. I found this part of the book is where it dragged for me. And it wasn't bad, it was actually quite an interesting plot point and plot line. But now that I'm thinking about it, it was kind of pointless because of considering what happens at the end. But anyway, it was a very good plot line, it just dragged a bit. So Ephraim is someone that actually grew on me after this, like during this book. He has that good character development where he turns from like an arsehole to someone that's at least like tolerable to be around. And he develops a nice relationship with Pax as well. Pax also gets some great character development. He's no longer that inquisitive boy, but now like a boy just beyond his years, 13 going on 30. I love how there's a map for the Battle of Mercury. But yeah, I love, we found out more about existing characters too. So we find out more about Octavia, for example, and I think that's really fascinating, going into the past, and these characters are discovering things that they never knew before, and they're really discovering what it takes to be a leader and seeing how they were actually quite naive in the first trilogy when they were only 19 or 20, 21. Pierce Brown is not afraid to kill off characters at all. So I think within like the first chapter or two of this book, he's killed off like not a main character, but a side character that we thought was going somewhere. And then within the first like 100 pages, there's another like somewhat important character just killed off. It just happens so out of the blue, and it's like, it's a perfect indication of what war is. The random horror of it. 1 minute the character's standing there, and if you read this book, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the next minute, they're just, their whole top half is missing from a ridiculously high caliber sniper or chain minigun or whatever it was. But yeah, these characters are not safe. The stuff that happens to some of these characters will have you just holding your breath, just hoping that they make it out. Like, despair is so heightened in this book. The world building of this book is, again, a step up from every other book prior. If we look back at the world building and writing from this book to Red Rising, it's like night and day in the difference. The prose have improved so much, and I found there was many times where I had to go to a dictionary to figure out what certain stuff means. And it isn't overly complex like Dune, where it's just like, it fries your brain. You can like easily figure out what is meant from in a sentence just from the context. But yeah, the prose have improved a lot. It feels darker, way more mature, broad in general. Like, Pierce brings in so much more concepts and ideas to the story. And also he has like very potent discussions and philosophy on the themes and of the story. So things like fear and love, the fear night and the love night. But war, imperialism, the horrors of war in general, the politics, loss, all of the human emotions that make up these people and the things they're going through and the struggles they're facing right now. And I love how the dialogue consistently improves, because we're dealing with very devious, manipulative, extremely intelligent characters in this book. And it really does feel like that when you're reading a character like Lysander or Atlas or even Darrow with his insidious, like, devious plans. And yeah, the political intrigue and the designs that Darrow's enemies have, like Atalantia, and I actually forgot about the Ash Lord, but the Ash Lord in 2 before he died, and people like the Red Queen, which I also forgot about. It all just feels really authentic and real. But yeah, the world building is incredible. I love to see all the new technologies and stuff. Like, for example, we heard of the Drachenjägers in the last book, Iron Gold, but now we see them in action, and damn, it's epic. Like, the warfare is just so good. Like, there's a moment in part 1 where Darrow gives a little speech for these people that are just stuck somewhere, and it just hit me so hard. Like, I don't even want to elaborate, but man, Dark Age, So for some reason, this book really felt like Pierce just had all these ideas that he just wanted to get out, and he just put them all on the page. But it reminds me of Game of Thrones, just in its like complexity and the way the story has developed and progressed. We get to see a more intimate side of some of these characters, like Virginia and Victra in particular. Even the characters that I don't like and are on the enemy side go through their share of hardships, like Lysander. I don't like Lysander, but his struggles in this book were really fascinating, and as much as I begrudgingly say it, he kind of earned his way to the events of at the end of the book. I give the writing style and the world building both a 9 out of 10. Overall, this book gets a 9.5 out of 10. The best book in the series, although it does have some minor setbacks. For example, the violence can be a bit over the top. The structure is a bit weird. The highs of this book way overwhelm any of the cons or flaws I have with it. So yeah, I'm gonna briefly mention some of my favorite moments from this book, which will contain spoilers. So basically all of part 1 is a favorite. Like, that shit is so epic. Like, just jaw-dropping scenes. When that first atomic comes down and Darrow is just radios the people that are sheltered in the bunker, and they're just watching it come down, and he just says his little speech about them seeing the veil and clutching their little piece of dirt from Mars. I'm just like, oh my God, this is so emotionally crazy. Like, I can't believe it. 1 million people just gone like that. And then the storm gods, oh my God, the storm gods. This was something that I particularly remembered from my reread, and it was just as satisfying on this time through. Like, just the epic proportions of it, to use the terraforming methods of the planet to destroy the enemy. And then we obviously have Orion going crazy and releasing the storm gods at full capacity, literally burying cities in the ocean, and it makes it look like Darrow did this as well, so that people think Darrow is like some sort of demon with no conscience or morals. But Lysander's also like, yeah, damn, this is why we need to stop Darrow. These times, like, Atalantia is like releasing literally nuclear bombs. All of part 1 was just incredible. Like, seeing the back and forth between Darrow and Lysander earning his scar, the trials and tribulations they both go through, the helplessness, the hopelessness, the chaos of war. Brilliant, beautiful stuff. Another thing I love is Pax and Elektra. Again, they get, especially Pax, he gets some more character development. And yeah, just a great character. I'm really, really looking forward to what we see from him. Illyria is also an amazing one. Illyria, Volga, and Victor is also a favorite moment. It's the link up we never knew we needed. It's so good. But even before we get to that point, when Illyria escapes with Volga from the ship and we meet the Askamani, that part is just so incredible. The setting and the tone and the atmosphere is just spot on perfect. And it really reminds me of the ending of Howling Dark. I didn't actually clock this until a reread. Another great moment is Lyria helping Volga and Victor to escape from the Red Hand. And then we see Victor's rampage through the Red Hand, which brings me to another rampage, which is Daxo or Telemanus. And this death maybe hit me the hardest, I'm not sure. Oh, wait. It's either this or Dancer. But yeah, just seeing that whirlwind of power just going through those people barehanded, like I said, we see the gold brutality and efficiency on this book in display. But the Day of Red Doves in particular was crazy. It didn't hit me as much this time because I knew what to expect, but just a crazy scene. And again, it reminded me of Game of Thrones, like a red wedding or something like that. I can clearly see Pierce Brown's inspirations now, like Game of Thrones, the numerous Dune and Hyperion references in this book. Mustang, I loved almost all of Mustang's chapters. I loved the political intrigue even more than I expected to. I loved her capture, and I absolutely loved her conversations with the Jackal. or let's call him the Abomination. I noticed people didn't like this part, and I can kind of understand why, but what made me love it is Mustang's relationship with this new jackal. Here is where it gets a bit over the top. Like, this guy's just absolute pure evil. He's even more evil than Atlas, if that's even possible. But yeah, we have so many villains for Lightbringer. Volsung Far, when he blood eagles Sephi. That's a great moment. And finally, and Ephraim, just when I was beginning to like him, he freaking, he like has to become noble and honorable and go do the good thing, but ends up dying and having his heart eaten out by Volsung. And finally, the end scene with Lysander's, with Darrow figuring out that Kato is actually Lysander, and everything that follows was amazing. Seeing the sun-blooded chariots, or whatever they were called, utilizing that whilst the EMP is down, and utilizing the golds and obsidians. The difference between Lysander's force and Darrow's in this moment was just way too big. It was really like fascinating just to see the contrast of this, what we would usually see in a fantasy book with like swords and chariots and horses, and how powerful they are with no like EMP, no technological warfare. They just ran through the army. Yeah, that was a great moment. Also seeing the return of Cassius. Even my first read through, I knew that Cassius was coming and that he wasn't dead, but seeing it again is still like, yes! So yeah, I love Cassius. I'm really hoping that next book we see a lot more of Cassius and a lot more of Severo. But yeah, that is Dark Age, the best book in the Red Rising series. Have you read this book? Are you about to read it? Have you finished? Who was the best villain in this book? That's something that I would love to know from you guys. Like, was it Atlas? Was it Atalantia? Was it Apollonius, even though he wasn't in the book much? Was it Lysander, although you could argue he's not even a villain? Was it the Abomination, which is just pure evil? Or someone I have not mentioned? You could even consider Darrow to be evil. But yeah, do the YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, and I'll see you very soon in my next video. Peace.